Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to today's Reddit Quickie from the subreddit HFY, called Dakka, written by Plusium. The link to the original will be down below, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Before we start, I just wanted to thank Mr. Anderson for being here with us. His input was quite enlightening. It has been quite a while since the last contact, right? The lead creature asked. The skinny, chitinous creature before it turned to face the significantly shorter and squatter compass. Yeah, about 5 centuries if my memory serves me correctly, replied the squatter insect creature in question. Mr. Anderson merely smiled and nodded. Anyways, gentle beings, if we were to follow me. The large creature gestured at the 2 armored-up beings guarding the doorway of the facility. As you all know, I'm sorry for the repeating this, but it does help to hear it in one go. This is the largest public secret that is aside from the Alpha Centauri. I'm sure you've all heard the rumors about what goes on in here, and many of you probably have moles, but the Feds have apparently decided that our nation needs a little bit more of a morale boost, especially considering all of those, terrorist attacks recently. The attendant beings all quietened down the instant they entered the cavernous facility. On display in the massive hangar were collections of pedestals, equally spaced out, almost like an art gallery. Perched on said pedestals were ambiguous items and in ascending size and tiny to gargantuan. Anyway, this is the first item here, the Lost Resort. Now, I may not inspire some confidence when the first thing I show you off is essentially a suicide device. Let me assure you, it is anything but. This tiny thing here can be slipped easily into a location by an infiltrator and then be detonated remotely with a yield of up to a ton of TNT. The presenter turned to Mr. Anderson. That is what you humans use, yes? Anything to add? Mr. Anderson smiled a wry smile and cleared his throat and began. Yeah, only for the larger yields, though. It is quite nifty, though. I do question the design. Sure, the coin shape is rather clever, but we do live in a cashless society. A piece of litter or gum would be far less likely to draw attention. As it is, someone would probably take it home, thinking that they found an artifact or something. The presenter froze for a moment. Huh. Surprisingly insightful. I'll be sure to pass it on to the boys at R&D. Anyone else? He was met with a collection of species-specific shakings of the head. All right, on to the next one. They walked to the next pedestal that was rather quiet, filled only with the muffled whispers of the assembled journalists and scientists. Right, this is a revolutionary new combat device. It is a tear gas grenade? A rather vicious choice if you're going to be using it for crowd control. Mr. Anderson cut in. Oh, you've seen these before. Yeah, we've had them since pre-space. Had a lot of civil unrest back then. Impressive. It took quite a while for the engineers to make them suitable for crowd control. They worked, but a bit too well. Any questions? What purpose would these serve against the terrorists if they are designed for crowd control? A small, rhino-like journalist spoke up. Good question. As I said earlier, these are toned-down versions. Full-strength versions work great for safely eliminating terrorist compounds without losing men. The journalist seemed aghast. You're talking about chemical warfare? Oh, don't be silly. It's not fatal. Besides, who cares about a couple terrorists? The presenter's response hardly seemed to soothe the journalist. Hey kid, Anderson called out, inspecting some random trinket on a smaller platform. Yes, the angered journalist responded. Ain't a war crime if it ain't a war time. Mr. Anderson snorted to himself and then ran his confused expression. Suppressing his smoke, the presenter quickly asserted control back over the crowd. Right, assuming that's all, we've got a good while to go. The boss only gave us an hour, so we should move along now. The whispers were a bit louder on this trip. When they arrived, they were greeted at the sight of what looked like a green lunchbox on stilts. Before we start, any comments to make, Mr. Anderson? The presenter arched an eyebrow. Mr. Anderson cracked a smile. Of course. Mind if I examine it? Taking the wave as a gesture of assent, Anderson eased the metal case off the pedestal. Looks like a claymore to me, just weird and scientified. Don't see why, though. Explosions do way better job at wounding people. Wounding people, Mr. Anderson, I'm afraid that you don't understand. This device is meant to kill as many terrorists as possible, not wound them. A wounded soldier can still fight and hurt Federation personnel. True, I suppose with modern medicine it is not as hard to treat injuries as it once was. It used to be that you'd blow off a couple of the enemy's legs and then have their resources go to keeping them alive. Way easier on the enemies if you just killed the Freckers. The room was silent. Well, then, I suppose that's all you need to know about that. It's a mine. It vomits plasma on everything in front of it. Very deadly. Moving on. The walk was full of whispers and murmurs. Anyways, this is the latest model of the assault technology. GRTX. Assault rifle fires off a single burst of full auto. Each magnetized plasma round contains 15 fifta of energy. Any questions? Good, let's move on. The presenter rushed. Excuse me, one of the journalists interrupted his swift walk to the next platform. Yes? He looks like he wants to say something. The journalist pointed to Mr. Anderson, who at the moment was making a point of examining his shoes. What is it? Well, I'm not just that much of a fan of plasma weaponry. Sure, they work great against flesh, but typically terrorists make a point of not running around in their birthday suits. I've seen particularly thick cardigans detonate pistol rounds early, and end up with only minor burns in the victim. I just doubt that the thing can go through a ceramic body plate. I'm not sure whether to be flattered or insulted. I do believe that you are drastically overestimating our ability to carry something as heavy as ceramic armor for any length of time. True, I suppose. You wanted to move on? Yes, let's. The journalists didn't bother to hide their talk. I am just going to let Mr. Anderson introduce this one, since he seems to know so much about our weapons. The presenter stated jokingly, You complimented me. I'm afraid I haven't the slightest clue what this is. Anderson glanced up at the strange lump of metal. Yeah, got nothing. Not so all-knowing after all. This is an energy field generator. It'll disperse any plasma projectiles within 15 FPA. Though it does scramble all electronics inside as well. Great for night ops. Any questions? Will we be given a more in-depth description of these afterwards? You seem to be skipping a lot of details. Of course. All information and documents will be published shortly. As for the information, my apologies, but it is lazy writing. Excuse me? I've got a script, so I don't accidentally reveal something that is classified. Apparently, I can't be trusted enough. Fair enough. The next couple of exhibits were fairly similar, until something caught Anderson's eye. I'm sorry, but is that a fricking lightsaber? He gestured to the familiar-looking hilt. The presenter grasped the hilt and pressed the big red button. With a swoosh, the gleaming rod of white plasma leapt to the tip. It's great, isn't it? It can deflect plasma bolts and cut through solid steel. Yes, that's the dumbest stuff I think I've ever seen. Sorry. I get that this is a presentation of cool things to raise morale. But come on, that thing is a death trap. There is no safety, no guard, nothing to stop it lopping off your own limb. Plus, no force means good luck moving it fast enough to block a bolt. Plus, there's the energy, the heat, the storage, handling. I could go on for ages. Who decided that this was a good idea? Rather than being incensed at Anderson's tirade, the presenter seemed mildly amused. I believe it was the human ambassador bet the head engineer a tenner, whatever that is, that he couldn't make one. The collected journalist chuckled. Anderson paused. Yeah, that'll do it. Moving on. He seemed somewhat keen to move on from his misjudgment. So what's that thing? He pointed at what seemed like a Predator drone mounted on a platform. That's the latest generation of close air support. Capable of 10 kilowatts of output on a pulse laser. It does easily eliminate any hostiles in the area. Guaranteed to be the best CAS in any given battle. Boring. Wait till you've seen a restored A-10 in action, then tell me that it's the best CAS. If it's something that requires restoration, I can hardly see how it's the most effective tool in today's age. Are you kidding me? The only reason they stopped making them was it cost too damn much to transport the ammo that they chewed through in space. 13mm shells of neatly 4,000 rounds per minute. Good luck surviving that. Plus no fancy plasma engines and whatnot, so 90% of all modern tracking equipment is null. You certainly seem passionate. Tell you what, after all of this, you can show me a couple videos and I can decide for myself. Sounds good. Say, is that a tank? Anderson pointed across the room at what seemed to be, well, a tank. Indeed it is. A hover tank, actually. Shut it. The presenter turned back to Anderson as he was about to speak. Whatever you're going to say, shut it. That thing there is the best of the best, top of the line, plasma rail cannon, speeds of up to 50 R, not affected by terrain. 2 coaxial plasma repeaters, and I guarantee that you humans have nothing that can top that. Anderson paused for a bit. You may be correct, if only on a technicality. When we got to space, most of our old hardware was decommissioned. It was mainly used for regional conflicts, and when every country just wrecked off to another planet, skirmishes were few and far between. Besides, it was far too costly to fly a tank across the galaxy. As you know, better off using FTL missiles. I suppose we never got back to the old ways once our FTL got better. And your point is? That's certainly a long speech with no real point. Ah, but you see, my point is that we have nothing now to match that. Say, how well would that fancy heat-conducting armor fare against a tungsten sabot going at Mach 5? Or how would the undersight handle a copper lance from an RPG? I'd wager that railgun couldn't go through over a meter of effective armor. The presenter sighed. Very true, you humans always had a knack for overkill. Especially while planetside, one would think that you could never have enough firepower. Ah, that's heresy. One can never have enough, Dakka. Not the GUA-8, or the Shrewer Gustav, or the Tsar Bomber, or the Davy Crockett. Nothing. There is no such thing as enough, Dakka. The presenter shook his head. You humans are quite strange. Just you wait until one of our military measuring competitions. That's where the real firepower is at. Well then, allow me to call an intermission. I'll be here chatting with Mr. Anderson. Please feel free with any questions on your mind. And that, my friends, is the end of this Reddit Quickie. I hope that you enjoyed. If you'd like to support the channel or the author, all the stuff is down below. And as always, I hope that you guys have a good one, and I'll see you in the next story. Cheers. Or wander around, or whatever. We will regroup in 10.